Okay guys, this is part 2 of the Spring Chinook seminar at Three Rivers Marine. This is on the trolling portion, so if you missed part 1, go back and watch it. Enjoy.
When I'm fall Chinook fishing in August, I run all the bigger size. I want more flash down there because there's a lot of coho around and big kings that don't mind the bigger stuff. But 6 one, half dozen the other. I don't think it makes a big difference. I would go the medium size or the large size. Yep. Okay, so that's our basic setup. Again, green chartreuse flashers are the most popular color. I like that 50-50, that half red, half chartreuse, because I like contrast, okay? Fish like contrast as well. So that's why, you know, if I've got 5 or 6 out, chances are that most of them have that red and chartreuse or all green. I'm going to take this lead off real quick and I'll put this rod away. That's why I run those with a snap swivel, so I can take everything off and it's nice and clean, it's not swinging around. Good question, and a lot of it has to do with what the tide's doing that day. The very start of the tide, I can get away with less lead. When the tide's really ripping, I want to be on the bottom. If it's 22 feet of water, I want to be no shallower than 20 and a half. I want that bottom couple feet. That's where those fish are traveling. In areas that there's current, like rivers, fish travel down lower. They're not suspended. Okay? When it's a slack tide and there's no movement, those fish might be spread out a little bit more. But when the current is pushing, those fish are on the deck. You will catch more fish if you're in that bottom 1 to 2 feet of water than you will if you're suspended. So, just depends. I always run, that's why I had these rails put on here. I want my rods up a little ways because I don't like having my rod tipped way up here. It drives me nuts. I like having my rod almost straight, and I always run more lead on the bow rods than I do on the back rods. Okay, I want these pretty much straight up and down. Not 100%, I want a little bit of an angle to them, but not much at all. Okay, so I run more lead up here, oftentimes 8 to 10 ounces of lead. Okay, in the back, I'll run 5 to 6 ounces of lead. So these are pretty straight up and down, those are spread out a little bit. It helps me if we hook a fish, okay, they're not always right in each other right off the get-go. A little bit of staggering, okay? So bow rods, I would say, good rule of thumb, 6 to 8 ounces. Back rods, 4 to 5 ounces of lead. Question?
And how do you time your day based on the
Tide
tide?
book. Strictly a tide book. Okay? Doesn't matter. If I'm trolling in or outgoing. The water's very rarely pushing hard enough to take me upriver. I'm always trolling with the tide or with the flow. So 9 times out of 10, it's downriver. Okay? There's times that I'm zigzagging back and forth, but I'm trolling with the flow. I don't want to be bucking it. Okay, so if it's pushing me upriver, I'm not afraid to turn around, but 9 times out of 10, it's still going downriver. Even if the tide's super slack, I'm still trolling downriver. So enough lead to get me down in that bottom couple feet of the water column. Okay, so we'll go to rigging herring, dyeing herring, and I'll start again from ground zero. I've got a bait cooler. This cooler's sole purpose in life is to hold herring. You know, I try and this is all it ever sees is herring, okay? So I've got it about half to 3/4 full of ice, keep it nice and cold. I like doing my herring in Ziploc bags, so at the end of the day, my bait cooler's not full of herring smells and so forth. I don't have to wash anything out. I throw the bags away and I'm done, okay? So I've got a couple different bags here because I'm gonna do 2 different colors of herring, okay? Same brine, but 2 different colors. So they're about half full of distilled water. Main ingredients, rock salt, okay? Non-iodized rock salt. So this can be purchased at Three Rivers. That's where this came from. I don't have a measuring cup with me, but a good rule of thumb, half full Ziploc bag, okay? About 1 cup of rock salt, okay? So I'm just going to eyeball it here. So I'm going to do this bag full. Approximately 1 cup. I'm going to do this Ziploc, approximately 1 cup. I'm not going to add herring until the last minute because I'll show you what I'm doing. There's one other ingredient that I swear by, and that's brine and bright. This product's made by ProCure. It's got bite enhancers in it. It also firms up my herring extremely well. I don't think it firms it up as good as rock salt, but this doesn't pickle it like rock salt. If you put too much rock salt in your herring, they will be a shriveled mess. They look like petrified wood. Okay, they're all, And it's not the end of the world, but it's not certainly how a herring looks in real life, okay? So I do 1 cup of rock salt and about half that in brine and bright. So I would do about half a cup of brine and bright. You don't want big clumps in there. So I shake it up real well. You can see that periodically it gets clumps in there. Just break it up. So about half a cup of that. And it's almost brown in color, but that doesn't make a bit of difference because we're going to add dye to it. So again, another half cup of brine and bright in this, doing 2 different colors. I like chartreuse and I like blue herring, okay? That blue herring up there to me is way too blue. That's not what I want. Blue shows up underwater better than any other color if you look at the spectra chart. And blue also makes herring extremely shiny. It really details the scales on a herring. And I'll show you, this stuff is nasty. Even from opening up the lid of it, my hands are gonna be blue, and I knew better, and I did it anyways. And they will be blue for a couple days. It washes off your boat, it doesn't wash off your skin. Washes off your boat okay. I wouldn't dump a big pile of it in your boat. But for some reason it soaks into your skin and it will be blue for several days now. When I'm doing my blue one, which is going to be my first recipe, I am not going to pour it straight in the bag because I will make a mess and I will mess it up. I pour it into the lid. And I'm doing it like I'd be less than I'd be salting a steak. I've got literally, you guys can see just a few, I don't have much at all on there, okay? Watch what I do when I add this to the water. Just a little bit of it in there, mix it up. I'm going to do a touch more than that, but see how it makes it, it doesn't take much, okay? I'm going to do just a touch more.
You say that's like a half a teaspoon?
Far less than that. Far less than that. I don't even know how to give you a measurement of how little it is. It's start little, add to it if you need it. Okay, that's how I want it. I just want a blue mist in there. So I'm going to seal this bag up, and it's going to, that brine and bright turns it a little greenish, but that's okay. And I like to take this and mix this in as good as possible before I add my herring to it, because if I do this with my herring in it, I'm going to lose scales, okay? So I'm going to mix up this rock salt, mix up this brine and bright, nice and good. Doesn't have to be 100%, but see that color that I'm getting? Just a pale blue color, okay? That's ready to have herring added to it. My other color that I really like is chartreuse. And chartreuse can be on fire, okay? I typically mix it up and I put chartreuse maybe up on the bow rods and blue in the back and see what's working better that day. I'm not afraid to dump straight into the water on this stuff. I like it, I want it looking like antifreeze, okay? So I would say several tablespoons or more. And I know that looks really yellow in chartreuse, but I want more than that. The blue is a lot stronger dye than the chartreuse is. That's how I want that stuff to look, like so. Mix it up really good. Again, get that rock salt and that brine and bright. Start the dissolving process. And don't do it with herring in there. Get it done ahead of time. Let it, and I'm not afraid to let this sit in here 20 or 30 minutes and let it really soak in, okay? So now the hard part's done. I got my 2 brines ready to go. Got my green label herring. I'm sorry? If I'm fishing tomorrow, I'm doing this right now. I want to give the herring a good chance to firm up and solid and get nice and solid. If I'm going fishing in an hour from now, my herring's not going to be brined. It's going to be sitting in salty water for an hour, and it's not. No. I'm not afraid to fish at the fair. So I'm doing this for tomorrow, let's say. I wouldn't be afraid to fish it the following day, but I certainly wouldn't go any longer than that. I start over. You know, it's pretty inexpensive ingredients. We're talking distilled water and rock salt for the most part. The brines are a little bit more expensive, but they last. You saw how much blue. That blue will last me for years just doing that little amount. Chartreuse I go through a little bit more. So let's picture this. This herring's been thawed out for maybe an hour at the start of the last session, but Typically this is frozen solid. I'll take it and crack it in half, you know, and that's enough to do 2 to 3 dozen herring. I'm only gonna do 6 in each just to split it up so I'm not wasting a bunch of herring. So I'm gonna take my herring, go straight into my brine. So I got 6 in there, and typically I'd be doing 2 dozen in each of them. You know, if I got 4 or 5 rods out, I want a dozen herring per person, just in the event that, you know, we get into a great bite, or, you know, I've had coho fishing down at Lower Columbia where I've gone through 11 dozen herring at 10 o'clock in the morning because the coho fishing's phenomenal. Springers, you typically don't go through so much bait, but I'd rather throw it away than not have enough, okay? So herring's in the brine, just gonna let it sit there. I don't want this thing getting bounced around, mixed up, just leave it alone, okay? As soon as it starts getting bounced around, you get scale loss. So I might churn it over every once in a while, but the way it is the way it's gonna be fished. This goes in the boat, this goes wherever until tomorrow when I'm getting ready to fish, okay? When I get to the boat launch in the morning, or when I get in the water, or when I get to the marina, what I like to do is go through and cut a half dozen or so baits or more. And then I cut them, put them right back into my brine. That way when I'm in a hot bite, or I'm in a hurry to get several rods rigged, they're cut and ready to roll, okay? I'm not sitting there with my bait cutting guide and my cutting board. They're in my brine, ready to roll. I don't need to go through and cut them all, but I do go through and cut, you know, half dozen of them to a dozen of them. So what I do is I grab one of my herring out. That blue is already starting to brighten up that herring. Just that little bit of blue makes the scales really stand out, okay? So bait cutting guide, we talked about this a little earlier. There's people out there that don't want to use these, and that's great. If you feel comfortable, if you feel confident and comfortable in cutting it freehand, do so. I don't very rarely use these unless I'm going to sit down and hammer out a bunch of them because it keeps them nice and uniform. Head always goes to that end, so that's what it's going to look like in there. Everybody see that okay? And this just gives me a guide for my knife to go. Nice sharp knife, and I'm not pushing down like with a razor blade. I want to make one swath. I'm going to go right next to the gill plate as close as possible. Nice sawing action back and forth to make a nice clean cut. Okay, there it is. Okay, got a nice clean angled, beveled cut. I don't want it mushed. I don't want that end rolled over. I want it nice, crisp, and clean. Okay? Toss the heads overboard. You can toss them back in the bag for a little extra scent. What I do with mine, we don't fish them with the guts in them. Okay? So you can take a knife and twirl it around and get the guts out. That's great. I think it does more damage to the herring than it's worth. So I'll use a pair of needle nose pliers. These are a little frozen still, so I'm going to be careful with it. When they're thawed out and they're brined, then it's a lot easier to get it in and out. So I like to remove the guts out of the inside because I don't want the guts tailing around, tingling in my hooks. So now I've got a herring cut and the cavity cleared out. Everybody get that so far? Pretty self-explanatory. Here's a little trick that I do. I think this makes a huge difference, okay? I would encourage you to hook one of these up, put it in the water, and hook one of these up like this. I'm going to cut a flat spot in the tail. I'm going to notch a V in the tail. When I get rid of that tail, this herring, let's say it spins 100 times per minute with the tail on it, it'll spin 200 times a minute with the tail off. Less resistance, okay? So that's how I fish my herring. I cut the tails of it off, okay? Not a lot of people do that, little trick of the trade. Here's another one. You got water going into that cavity, okay? It's making it blow out. It's making it mush over. I don't have a nice way of saying this, but take your knife and put it in the outtake hole of the herring. Outtake hole. Make just a little slit. Can't even see that I did it, but I did. I made one little cut there. Water in, water out. Doesn't flare out, doesn't mush up as much, okay?
Okay guys, that wraps it up for part 2. Move on to part 3 for more great information on trolling the Columbia River for spring Chinook. Three Rivers Marine is Western Washington's destination for anglers. Three Rivers Marine is run by fishermen for fishermen. Visit their website at threeriversmarine.com.